Amy Landino, no pressure.
I mean, Phenom, 60 years old, roughly. I mean, what an intro. What an intro.
Yeah. Well, how long ago is it 7 years we've known each other?
I would like to say, I don't even know what year it is anymore. It's just so crazy. Time just
2020, the year that
flies.
2020, the year that should not have happened.
I know. We're not canceling it though. We're going to survive. We're going to be better than ever. Okay.
It gives us an opportunity to work on ourselves
Yes. Shall we? Let's do it.
this year, which really dovetails nicely with the topic that we want to talk about today, which is branding. What a great topic to bring you on as a guest for.
Thank you. And thanks for saying you're a fan of me. Steve, I was a fan of you before you knew about me. See, that's why I don't know how long we've known each other, because I was watching Steve Dotto Tech videos on YouTube a very, very, very long time ago.
When you were just a child.
When I was just born. Yes, correct.
Okay. Now, though, one of the things that really, and we will be obviously kind of throwing the platitudes back and forth, but one of the things that's always impressed me about you is I think that you have reinvented yourself. Is it 3 or 4 times since I've known you?
I think of it as an evolution,
Yeah.
kind of like when you listen to Destiny's Child as a young lady. It's not the same Beyonce experience as you would get today, because we all had to grow up and we all had to learn new things and have life experiences. But yeah, I think I've mastered the art of the pivot, as we've
There
discussed.
you go, the pivot.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
often when I speak with our peers and our friends, it's like, hey, have you heard from Amy? What the hell is she doing now?
I know. Every time too, it's like I get a call like, "Hey, I just want you to know, we're worried about you." And it's just like, okay, well, I appreciate that, but stay in your lane. I'm doing good. I mean, like, we all got to make mistakes. Even if I'm going to pivot into something that's not going to make sense to anybody, I know who I'm talking to, and it all comes together, and the right people get the memo, and we move on.
And then you do it, and you do it regardless, and you make the decision yourself, regardless of what other people are saying.
Correct.
Yeah.
Always.
I sometimes feel a little bit sorry for Vincenzo, but
Yeah, I don't blame you for that. Yeah, he's
no,
keeping up though. He's doing great.
yeah, he is. Speaking of reinventing himself, but the topic today. We're going to start with personal branding. We're going to start with personal branding, and because you've gone through it so many times, because you've done these reinventions, you must have a real appreciation for just the subtleties of how you get how a brand happens and what and in just how your brand lands with a community.
Definitely. I mean, to me, you can use like the old cliche, right? Like, what do people say about you when you're not in the room, just to talk about what a brand is. But these days, I feel like, we for a long time, we saw people complaining about branding and standing out, that there was no room. Every time you wanted to start something, there's no room for that because someone's already done it. But I think we've finally proven that it doesn't matter what your numbers are. It all comes down to who's actually in your community. And that has everything to do with how your brand is making them feel. So my appreciation for branding usually comes from the fact that someone is making me feel like I am in their circle and that I am their friend. And when I'm in like that mindset, I'm going to watch that person's videos, or I'm going to look at that person's Instagram feed and read what they have to say, because of the way that I feel like they're talking to me. So it doesn't matter if it's an oversaturated market. It's more just, are you really clear on who you're talking to, and how are you exuding that in your content, in your branding, in the way that you talk, in the way that you present yourself, in the way you don't present yourself, just everything.
And you said that it was a hackneyed phrase, of what people are saying about you. But I think it's important to kind of start with is
Yeah.
really identifying what branding is, because I think a lot of us think branding is our colors and as our logo and is things like that, and they're part of it. They're part of it. But the description of marketing is when you tell people about you. Is when you tell people what you are. But branding is when people say they've heard this about you. They recognize it. Actually, Liz, we just did a branding exercise in our own community, and Liz Azian, who you know well, who does all of my branding and all of the marketing for the design work for Dottotech, said that if you were a lover, if you were like dating somebody, and marketing is me telling you I'm a great kisser, marketing is I heard you're a great kisser.
Branding is, yeah.
Branding is, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
branding is.
Uh-huh.
And so,
Mhm.
so understanding that subtle difference, I guess it's almost like Maya Angelou. It's people will remember how you made them feel. So it's the impression that people
Absolutely.
have of you. So
And ideally, your marketing's going to line up with that. But it's great to know where your brand actually stands so that you can see like where are you not connecting the dots.
So let's start with a couple of examples that we can kind of harken back to. Give me some examples of people who you identify that they've done a great job of branding their personal brands.
I am a YouTuber at heart. I've been on the platform for a long time. So the main example that has been inspiring me lately is an Australian YouTuber. Her name is, well, I guess her moniker is Sarah's Day. And she's kind of come up on the platform. She's very, very popular. I think also in the States, very, very popular. She's health and fitness and predominantly like clean eating. And now she's a mom, and there's a lot, or a mum, however she would say it, right? So there's so much of that there. And it's as simple as I know what she's going to do before she's going to do it, but she still surprises me because I feel like I'm energized to be healthier, to be more energetic, to smile more when I am in her presence, right? Like watching her videos or looking at her feed. And every single thing that she does, whether it's a video or it's a product or it's anything, she does these really great promos on Instagram anytime she's launching something. Her brand is so simple, but it is so present in everything that she does. It's effortless for you to know if something was done by her. And so I think it's stuff like that. We don't have to go crazy with having everything be over the top and graphic-y and all this different stuff. It's the simplicity of delivering a vibe, both in who you are and in how you actually have to articulate it, whether it's on packaging or in some graphics or everywhere else. But she's a really, really strong example to me, especially as my team and I have been venturing more into the e-commerce space. It's like, oh yeah, now we have to think about what does this look like? Does it feel like Amy Landino, not just on video, but when you hold it in your hand?
So you said that what she does seems effortless.
Hmm.
And in my experience, whenever something seems effortless,
It's
there is
not.
way more work that's gone into it than anything else. If something looks hard, it might have been easier to do because creating that, having that purity
Yeah.
is. So what do you have you ever kind of like role played through what the decision making process is for her as she creates a new piece of content or as she prepares?
There's a couple of elements that I've noticed specifically from her. One is something that I've always talked about is just you have to know who you're talking to. And that is so important. But over the years, I've also come to realize that just like at the very start, I wasn't doing YouTube for anybody but me. And now the same has to be true on some level because what you're doing, especially in a creative space, if you are a personal brand that's doing a lot in the creative space, which video is and photo is and writing is, you a little bit has to be for you too. So I think for me, when I see what she's doing, I'm looking at, okay, she's very clear on the fact that this is something that would work for her audience. And there's no way that she would do it unless this crew of women weren't going to receive it with open arms the moment it was there. But it's also something that she's excited about. She's not going to do something if it doesn't genuinely get her up in the morning, especially now with work-life balance and growing her family
Yeah.
and things like that. So now you're going to have to test that out, right? Where's the balance between what excites you and what excites the audience? Because that's where the delicate pivots start to come into play if they happen. But for her, everything's just so aligned, everything lands. And I think that that's probably the two biggest components of it.
So part of that has to be a real security in being willing to alienate, and maybe not alienate as in an aggressive alienation, but in order to define your personality and your personal brand so much so that people who aren't in your catchment area, aren't in your sweet spot, identify that they don't want to follow you. So being
Correct.
willing to push people away who should not be a part of your community. And
Yeah.
that's a really mature aspect, because we are numbers driven.
Yeah.
We get our affirmation by likes and thanks and in comments and engagement. And to be able to drive any individuals away from that, it's a challenge for us.
It is a challenge, but you know what I've come to realize the more that I look at, because I look at where I'm at and I like to look at people who are at every level, whether they're just getting their start or they've been doing this for a long time and they have just a massive community. If you're not differentiating yourself and getting the wrong people to not follow you right now, you're going to take so much longer to get to where you want to be. The bad news is that you're going to get to a point, if you are an utter and complete success, you're still going to have people who shouldn't be following you, and they're going
Yeah.
to treat you like garbage, because that's the nature of the internet. They don't leave you alone when they're like, this content is for me. They treat you like digital garbage, and they let you know it in the comments. So the world of the personal brand is not all sunshine and rainbows. Not only do you have to let the communities who aren't a fit know, because you want your numbers to truly represent what your ability to convert looks like, but later on, you need more people that are going to support you at scale than the number of haters you potentially have who are just kind of jaded about the fact that they wish they could do what you're doing or whatever. So
So
it's
attractive.
bad news either way.
But the common strength of successful online personalities is that they are willing to push those people away, that they actively actually would rather have a smaller, more engaged audience than a larger, more diverse and less focused audience.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. Because what is the point of having big numbers if those big numbers don't actually achieve anything? We may, if we want to go on the influencer track here, we're at a really interesting stage of how influencers and brands are engaging. But brands, as they continue to have years and years of executing real campaigns with people, they're going to see the numbers that don't convert and the numbers that do. And they're going to start to recognize where the imposters are versus the people who've really done the work. So again, as hard as it may seem to be okay with just a raw, true community who definitely is in it to win it with you, um, that may seem hard because you don't want to push away the numbers, but it's going to pay off massively in the long run.
And where so many people will discover that early on is they will have squeaky wheels in their community that ask and ask and ask and talk and talk and talk. And then when you look at your CRM, you realize they've not spent a nickel with you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the quiet ones that are just kind of going along and suddenly look and say, wow, they've bought everything I've ever created. So how do I serve them? How do I engage them rather than that squeaky wheel who's not generating bottom line? And it's a balancing act. But nevertheless, that is good evidence.
Absolutely.
So you give me one example. Give me another example of a person whose branding is knocking Amy's socks off.
I mean, like, I will say this. I was introduced to her when I did I did an audiobook read for Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Crushing It. I was featured in it, and I also read all of the women's stories in the audio version of the book. And that's how I was introduced to Lauren Everts Bostic from the Skinny Confidential. I think more on the blog and Instagram side, she's just totally mastered it. And she's the queen of again, we're not coming up with a better word right now, but alienation, right? Like, she is the queen of, if you don't like it, you can leave. I'm going to drop the F-bomb. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to dress how I want, but I'm going to bring you so much value that if you can't help but look, it's because you really are a part of this team and you really are about this community. And her colors and everything's so on point. I think from a visual standpoint, she's also really, really strong. So I highly recommend her, especially if you're like, how do we make the blog thing happen? She has figured that out.
You talked about the technical aspects of colors there, and you kind of brought that up. And we do spend time, I think we spend probably too much time on the trappings of brand rather than on the messaging of brand. but it's still important to us because it also gives us a sense of security as we move ahead. Just being within that space. When you did your transitions when you did your pivots, did you maintain a consistent color palette and a consistent flavor where you could see one transition into the other because they truly identified you, or did you see dramatic changes in the overall look and feel?
I think I've tended to gravitate towards similar colors, or at least there was like one that continued on so that it was a little bit more graceful. Um, I've also noticed that it's not just a brand kit that helps you to keep it continuous, or keep that continuity, I should say. It's also sometimes just environment. So a lot of what I'm doing is video and photo. So more of the bright and airy and white palette is where I tend to
I've
land.
noticed you've gone very
I
white lately. Yes.
so so that's a lot of what I prefer. And then there's going to be like subtleties of like pinks or teals depending on how far one way or the other that we are. Vlog Like a Boss is a great example of when we were using both teal and pink. And then I moved on to more like a little bit deeper pink, and the podcast came out and we got a little bit even deeper than that. And now we're kind of coming back to a little bit brighter teal blues, sort of in the future as we go. So I think for the most part, it's my preference. So that's been pretty easy to keep continuous, but I do think it's helpful if it's not completely out of left field.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
really is about how it feels with you. When you're a personal brand, like if you have to stick yourself next to a color, like what is that color? Because that's probably going to happen a lot.
And for people that might not recognize the term that Amy used, they were talking about brand kit. Is typically speaking, as you develop your overall brand, the look of your website, your content, is you'll come up with a palette of colors that you use over and over again. You'll come up with a font set. You might come up, obviously, you have a logo and things like that, and you'll come up with a stock thumbnail that you use in videos, and maybe a banner that happens within Instagram, and you'll have some different pieces of your brand, of your kit, that you, rather than recreate it each time, you just plug and play and you bring those in. But the one thing, for especially for people early on in their career, is coming up with a comprehensive brand kit, and using a tool like Canva is awesome, where you can just have all of those tools laid out. Coming up with that, really, quite often when you run into roadblocks, or when you lose a little bit of inspiration or lose a little bit of your mojo, looking at your content on brand, polished, sitting there, even if it's just a thumbnail of a video that you haven't finished yet and you've just decided to dabble with the thumbnail because you're still working on the video, that will often give you the inspiration and the confidence to move ahead, because you realize that you start to recognize the energy of your brand coming through that consistent messaging, that consistent format that you put in place.
Definitely. Definitely. And I think I just tweeted this morning. We're always like waiting for perfection before we're willing to dive in and do something. Just go with what feels right at the moment, because something, like I said earlier, evolving is what I'm all about. If it still doesn't feel quite right, good job. You're a creator, you're very creative, you're constantly trying to get better, and I think that's good. Fleshing it out over time is probably a smart move. It doesn't have to be exactly this brand kit right off the bat and then go forth. Some people can't even afford, when they're bootstrapping at the beginning, to go and get branding professionally and a logo. So you just kind of have to start from something like a Canva that just allows you to pull a couple of colors, test it out on a couple of templates, and just see what you can create and make it look like, okay, if I put these out, would this feel like me, or would this feel like the personal brand that we're working toward? If that's yes, then you're on the right track, and then you can flesh it out later as sort of like funds and bootstrapping becomes a little bit easier. I think it just depends on everyone's journey, but don't wait to be perfect on colors and logo. You have your face in a personal brand situation. You have your face, and that is so important, because today we even see that some of the biggest companies and brands in the world that have been a logo are often held accountable because of a face. And so we as personal brands have that going for us right off the beginning. That's a good thing and a bad thing. There's some insecurities that go with that. There's negative comments that go with that sometimes, but it's powerful and it's enough to start.
Let's get on to another example. And both women. Can I expect another female example coming
I
forward?
will. I'll go rogue for you. I like the ladies. Okay, I like to call
I
out the
do too.
ladies.
I'm
And
okay
for
with that.
the, I saw a couple of people asking. The second influencer I mentioned is The Skinny Confidential on Instagram. So you can find her over there. I think I might have stumbled over saying that a little bit. Her name's Lauren. But the third, I have to just call out my friend Marquez Brownlee, who's MKBHD on YouTube. I mean, he's just masterful when it comes to really simplicity of brand, but just making it an experience that you would come to expect. Very high quality, very high class, but not a lot of extra crap that you don't need for what he does. Because he's already doing a big deep dive into technology a lot of the time. He talks about things like cars or mobile phones or whatever the case may be on any given day. So there's enough nitty gritty that goes with that. Everything surrounding him with his brand is very clean. And I like his palette a lot. He has stuck with it for a very long time and it just works. It just goes great with him.
Yeah, he is a very, very interesting YouTuber to study. So it's so as you say, he does these reviews, but it's put him in a position. His honesty and his depth of knowledge in his space has put him into a different place where I guess this would go under branding. He's very careful to never say anything unless he truly believes it. You don't see a lot of marketing fluff coming from him.
100%.
And consequently, when he does say things that are even a little bit outside of his wheelhouse, for example, here's a guy that does phones primarily that did an interview with Elon Musk in his facility, and he challenged Elon on a few things and kind of asked him to explain a few things, and it landed, even though he didn't have the credibility of a journalist, but it still carried some additional weight. He's very careful about how he spends that equity, but he's built that reputation equity as a
Yeah.
result of the consistency of work that he's done.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to see Marquez sitting down with Elon Musk and asking random questions that would work for the brand of Tesla, of what to promote. He's there to ask the questions that genuinely interest him. So that's that one factor, but also serve the community he's spent a lot of his life, his literal adult life building. So it's very fun to watch him because he's going to spend the brand equity asking real questions that matter to him. And I think that's what makes the content interesting. It's not like any other interview you're going to watch, which is why he's also sat down. He sat down with Kobe Bryant before he died. He sat down with Bill Gates. Like, there's a reason. It's not just numbers. It's because there's going to be a different line of questioning.
He was on the Hot Ones.
The hot ones, yeah. Yeah.
So he's made it mainstream as far as culture goes. Here's one thing that's a thread that connects all three of the people that you've talked about, and you, and I would say probably in me too, is in every case, the content created by these people is not what they do, it's who they are. A big part of it comes through who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And their own personal ethos, their own personal, in just how you live, right?
I think that's super important because it's very hard to be a personal brand about something you don't 100% live and breathe. It's just, it's hard. That is not a sustainable model. Just saying, I'm going to get famous. What should I talk about? What's the hot thing right now? Okay, I'm going to start talking about, like, it doesn't work. You have to be willing. If you had to address your biggest fear in the world of speaking on stage for 30 minutes with zero preparation, what would you talk about? Because that's the only thing that you should even remotely consider to be your personal brand, because you're going to be in situations like this where, sure, I got the questions in advance, but if I didn't know what I was saying like the back of my hand, it would be a lot harder to do these interviews or going on and making a video, 2 videos a week. Like, you really have to be dedicated to what you're talking about to find the different ins and outs of teaching that to a community. So yeah, I believe that being a personal brand needs to be tied to something that actually gets you going.
Okay, so let's they've asked me to ask a question about building blocks of branding, voice, positioning, and aesthetics. This comes from a blog that you posted. Does it make sense to you?
Not
Okay,
yet. Please proceed.
if somebody
Sorry.
came to, so if somebody from your community comes to you and says, I need to, it's the first steps that I need to take to identifying my brand and putting it together. I'm just starting my blog. I'm just starting my vlog. I'm just starting my Instagram account, and that's going to support whatever business. What are the first 3 steps, that 2 or 3 steps that people should be taking?
Well, I think it goes back to just what I just said. Mostly, like, number one has to do with like what is actually interesting to you. We spend so much time focused on the wrong things that we think someone else is going to provide the answer to that question.
What are the wrong things we spend time focusing on?
The wrong things are, overly like, I was prepped with what examples I should provide. You know why? Because I actually don't pay as much attention to the rest of the world as maybe you think I should. I'm going to look when I need a little bit of inspo here and there, but I need to stay in my lane. The majority of people are scrolling incessantly. They're constantly reading, they're constantly looking outward to find what's supposed to be inward. When you do that, you might see something that's a great idea because someone else is doing it and clearly it's picking up right now, and maybe I should be a TikTok dancer. But if that doesn't get you pumped, if that's not true to you, if you don't have a beat to save your life, is not going to work. So looking out too much, scrolling too much, not really being okay with who you actually are, I think it ends up pointing back to another thing. Is you probably know exactly what would be a great fit for you, but it doesn't sound sexy, or you think your family is going to disown you and they think it's stupid. I mean, you have to address that. You have to do the thing that's right for you, not just the thing that's publicly, socially acceptable, because you have to build this thing for so long. Either way, it's not going to matter. And then when finally everyone goes, wow, what you're doing is actually really cool, and they want to jump on the bandwagon, like, you had to do a lot of work to get it to that point. They will do that if you did that work to get it to that point. So constantly looking outward for what is actually true to you from a personal brand standpoint is a huge mistake.
So that, to me, you know, what kept running through my head as you were saying that is, we have to be mature. And so many of us aren't.
Yeah.
But that's a maturity thing. And that's a maturity thing that does not come easily when we are in when you're building a social
Yes.
platform that's based on affirmation from the outside.
Yes, there's a major self-confidence issue with it,
Yeah.
because you have to be willing to say yes to yourself and what you think, and you have to be willing to say no to others, both of which out loud to others most of the time.
And it's the
So,
exact opposite of what we are raised to do.
yes, that's right.
Exact opposite.
That's right. And that's why
You're not taught to be
still,
selfish. Yeah.
yeah, you're not supposed to be selfish, you're not supposed to put yourself first. I get yelled at all the time. I'm like, I'm my number one. Why? Because they told me on the airplane I'm supposed to put my mask on first. And that genuinely is the truth, because I'm not going to be able to do anything for anyone else if I'm not taking care of myself. Because even if I do, and I think that's the absolute right thing to do, put everyone before me, it's, again, completely unsustainable. There's a major self-confidence issue with this, because you are afraid to say no to the people that you love or that you even hate. You don't even want to do that. You don't want that perception of you to get twisted. And that's why there's never going to be oversaturation of content, because there are still only so many people on this planet who are willing to take a chance on what's right in their gut.
The word that you use there is confidence. And so confidence relating to your personal brand is, you cannot separate the two. And, I am not a huge fan. We've had lots of conversations about this type of stuff. I'm not a big fan of the fake it till you make it mantra. I think that's ridiculous. However, I do believe that as far as your brand goes, if you don't have the confidence, you better fake it till you develop it, because that's the only thing that'll keep you in that lane, as you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that'll keep you true, is if you fake that you have the confidence to the world, and ultimately it'll be worth. Did you have to do that when you did your first pivot?
I do it every day. I fake it. Listen, I'm still faking it. Look, this is fake. Do you see this wallpaper? It's broken right there. Do you see?
You told me not to tell them that was fake.
I know. I had to, because it was too perfect. But fake it till you make it. I think that's an important phrase, because I can see why it is unfortunate, because what we are seeing is fakers who don't come through. And that could be because their self-confidence ran out, whatever. But I believe fake it till you make it is a powerful phrase in the positive if you are focusing on your confidence at it, not necessarily, faking that you have an operation that you don't. I think it's
Yeah.
fake. It's faking that you're showing up. You may not know what you're doing, but the one thing that I have loved learning over time about growing up and becoming wise and becoming an adult is that no one has any idea what they're doing. No one. They're just doing the best they can every day. And that's what I think fake it till you make it really is. It's the confidence you have to bring, and the confidence in saying yes, the confidence in saying no, and the confidence in saying, I don't know. There's a lot of people that won't even say the last one. They're just going to BS their way through something where they would be better served fueling their confidence by saying, I don't know the answer to that, but I am resourceful and confident I can find the answer to that, whether you're going to tell me or someone else. It's just the fake it till you make it with the confidence, because that is very hard to just fabricate. Fabricating confidence is difficult. That's where I think fake it till you make it is powerful and not controversial.
So branding, when we talk about different platforms, do you think differently about your branding messages based on the platform? You're strong on Instagram. You obviously have a huge YouTube following. Those would be the two. And you're pretty strong on Twitter too, are you not?
Twitter's weird. I just
Yeah.
love it.
Okay.
Twitter's weird, man. I haven't grown on Twitter in like 10 years, so I have no idea.
Do you think differently about branding based on platform?
I think about the context of the delivery of the message. I personally think my brand should look the same everywhere because it's my name. My name should be the same everywhere. So just like I wouldn't post a video on YouTube about the presidential election, I'm not going to go over to Twitter and start talking about, different things that are irrelevant to what we talk about in general, right? Every once in a while, I might reply about some of that stuff because it is me and I still have my beliefs, but I'm not going to start broadcasting as if that's a part of my brand because it's still my name there. But I look at each platform more as, how would this message be best received? The things that we typically talk about, should we put a picture with it? Should it just be text? Should we point people here? That kind of thing. I look at the platforms as just the place to customize how the message is being received.
You opened the door for me to ask you a sensitive question, which came up to me and I struggled with a lot. And that was with you mentioned the political scenario. And we have a forum, we have a platform, and we have a brand.
Yeah.
When Black Lives Matter kind of rose to prominence, I had several friends reach out to me and ask me specifically because of my podcast why I hadn't addressed my position on Black Lives Matter. And they positioned to me that because I had a forum, it was my responsibility to state my position. And I really struggled with that because I'm not an authority on it. I am the definition of white privilege. And so I actually did a podcast saying I've got 2 ears and I'm sewing my mouth shut because I don't, I'm learning every step of the way, and in every one of them is an epiphany to me. I didn't come down supporting anything. I just said, I am not the person to do this. How do we deal with those sensitive situations?
So it's funny you say that because I actually did have to. I published a YouTube video in regards to that. Initially, it was in the States, it started bubbling up, and so I started talking about it casually on Instagram. Here's the thing: for me, absolutely not an authority on this. I have my own level of privilege. It's significant. I will absolutely claim that. But I think the biggest thing was, my message is good morning, good life, and go after the life you want. And I can't sit here and say that I'm doing an effective job of helping people do that if a huge amount of people who are a part of my community are being held back in the ways that they are because of systemic racism. Like it was not fair for me to say, we don't talk about that here, because we don't live in that world anymore. We're at the point now where it's like the presidential election is fair game for everyone, because again, you're going to separate people from what you believe. But in this case, it was very clear that I had to say something, because I can't sit here and say I'm rooting for someone when this is going on and I have never done anything or said anything about it publicly. And they're asking me to. I think they have the right to ask me to, because these actions work, these protests, these steps that we are taking to make these changes, they work. History has shown that it proves that they work, because when we stand up for ourselves, changes happen. So I felt that it was my responsibility to speak up about that. And it was difficult because I'm not just alienating, I lost like 100 Instagram followers that day. I have no idea how many YouTube subscribers I lost. Like, I don't care. I don't care, because you're generally telling me that those people don't matter and how they feel. And I don't feel that way. But that's not the hard part. The hard part is friends and family who don't believe what you're saying. And now, because I have a platform as a job, you don't like what I'm saying, but I got to say it.
Yeah.
It's an important role that we have. And ever since, I knew this was going to happen, because ever since, actors and actresses started talking about politics, which a long time ago, they didn't do that either, right? Their job was to show up for a role that wasn't even them.
Yeah.
Their job was to show
And
up for a role that
athletes
wasn't
more
even them.
recently. Yeah, more recently athletes, and yeah.
Yeah,
Well, even
and now,
athletes go back to the 60s for that, the Olympics and stuff. Yeah.
right? But we are personal brands. We are who we are. We are not actors. So that's, I think, another reason why it's very powerful for us to speak up about it.
So in 3 years from now, when we have this conversation again about branding, do you think that you might be of the opinion that putting a stake in the ground on a moral issue ended up enhancing your brand or hurting you in the long run?
I think it goes back to what we were saying. It's going to make it so much better, because quite frankly, I'm good if no white supremacists are following me anymore. I'm super good on that. Like,
Yeah,
if we are just delicately saying, look, I know this is probably coming out of left field, but this is too important for our world. You can bounce if you don't like it. I think we got to do that every now and again, whether it's something super low key or something super high intensity, like Black Lives Matter, which is a statement, by the way. Steve, I got letters in the mail, people who wanted to tell me more about how I should not be standing with Black Lives Matter. I am not doing anything but stating those 3 words as a fact.
Mm-hmm.
And I stand by that.
Well done. And when you created that post, was it a harder post to create or easier than your standard content?
It was hard. I had the biggest anxiety attack of my life that week.
Yeah.
But then another reminder, like, hey, sweetheart, your job's not that difficult. These people are suffering, so get it out.
I did something I never do. I recorded the podcast. I didn't add any branding to it. I didn't do my normal intros. I didn't do anything. I recorded it as a straight statement, and then I had my wife and some of my team listen to it before.
I actually hired someone. I hired someone to review my content to make sure that the message was delivered, because we also have the best of intentions with what we want to say. And we can't ever know what it's like to be in that position. So just making sure that we're not saying something that's highly irrelevant or inappropriate is important, because I was very passionate on the issue, but it's not my job. And to your point, white privilege, blah, 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 pass the mic, just let the people who know talk about it. Don't put your spin on it. Don't add your salesy crap to it. Don't add people to an email list and say that you're going to start teaching people about Black Lives Matter. You need to pass the mic to the people that actually know, aside from making your own statement. and
Well
as
said.
cleanly as possible.
And at the end of the day, after I'd done it, and I'm sure after you'd done it as well, I recognized that I had spent some of the equity I've built with my community, but I looked at that as an investment
Yeah,
long term. Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
And it is occasionally good to get outside of your lane. Okay, let's pull it back and make things a little lighter. I'm glad we went there though, and so are the people in the
I
chat.
think
Thank
that
you.
was, it's very
Thanks for
relevant to
attending.
personal branding.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I didn't tell. And this wasn't on the rundown this week. I completely
I didn't
blindsided
get
Amy
that
with this
memo.
conversation. Let's talk about some things, the critical mistakes that you see people making. I always like to poke fun at anybody I can if they're doing something wrong. And boy, oh boy, I wish we could share examples. I really wish I could share examples of branding gone horribly wrong. But what are some of the classic mistakes people make?
I think the biggest thing is, just like we said, brand is not just your color palette or your fonts or your logos. The biggest mistake I see is just going a little too crazy with the graphic life. And the good thing is that we have so many amazing tools on the internet now that allow us to create something that is custom to us. But you also have to remember user experience. They don't need to see every single link, every single social handle, every single title, subtitle, bullet point, displayed in words and graphics on every single thing you do. I think there's a balance, and you've got to look at everything with fresh eyes so that it's consumable, because we really are in a busy, busy world of social media. So when you're scrolling, is it something that catches the eye, or is it so much that it makes your brain hurt and makes you just want to get away from it altogether? Um, in tandem with that would just be somebody who doesn't have a clue what their brand is, or they think they do, and it's just like the most disgusting, like, clip art crap you've ever seen in your life on a photo of yourself. I don't know. I see some pretty weird stuff that people think is their brand, and it's like, no, this doesn't work.
And I'll tell you one thing that I find people branding is they know that intimacy is something that they want, that people want. So what they do is they show people want us to have a peek into our lives, but they go in a direction. And I don't know how to put this properly, but they go into an inside joke direction with their personal life, as opposed to the ebb and flow of
Yeah.
their personal life. I mean,
Yeah.
you can create a character in your brand in your life. My dog isn't here. No, he's not here now. Farley is a character in my life, but he's there all the time. Of course,
Right.
letting me down right now.
Except for
But
today.
if there was suddenly a non sequitur that I thought would be really cute, of a dog walking in that they've never had, that my community has no context of, and then I make it look like it's happening all the time, or play it like an inside joke. And often people do that with a relationship with a spouse or something like that.
Yeah.
If you haven't made it, if there isn't a purpose to that relationship being exposed through your narrative, then it becomes distracting. That might be a polite way of putting it.
Yeah. I think there's just like, there's such this requirement of keeping the eyes moving and keeping attention. And sometimes we confuse throwing random things into the picture in order for us to feel like we're achieving that. And I agree with you. I think it just ends up being a distraction.
Yeah, good. Amy, thank you so much.
Of
This has been
course.
great. I know you've got another big thing coming up very shortly, so we'll call it a day now. But people, if they are interested, now your community today is you're teaching other young ladies primarily how to live the best life they can, and how to just
Mhm.
and your community on Patreon is just rocking along. You want to share some details of that? And
Yeah, absolutely.
you've got
I,
like physical products you're starting to sell.
Yes, we've got a lot going on, but Patreon has been so great. I started the Shine Squad on Patreon last year, and the motivation behind that was they were to help me write Good Morning, Good Life, the book. So I started it, and I just said, you guys are going to be my writing crew. I'm going to just test all this stuff on you, because they were the ones that really cared about starting a day on their terms. So that's how it all kind of began. We do a daily 5-minute, week daily 5-minute podcast for the entire community. We have live streams. I'm about to go live with them in a little bit. Just for one of the tiers, we offer my coaching program at a discount to other tiers. There's just so much going on. But they were all really there for the beginning of the book when we launched it. And we launched it at the end of 2019. And so they're just a really intimate community of fabulous morning routiners, and they just motivate me every day. So it's been really great. They're so supportive, and they're great to just bounce YouTube ideas off of. It's been cool.
So, and they find you at
Amy TV.
Amy TV. Just out of curiosity, when does the morning end for you? Like, I find I crash at like 11 and I want it to go on a little bit longer. When do you end your productivity day?
Okay, well, the end of my productivity day is like non-existent, but the end of the morning routine, we reverse engineer everything from the first appointment that you have in the day. So if you're trying to figure out what time should I wake up, what should I do in the morning to start the day on my terms, and you have to be at a job at 9 o'clock, reverse engineering that is important. So I think of the end of the morning routine in terms of, for most people, when you report to work or school. So everything before that is okay, well, you have to commute, maybe you have to get ready. And so what's the time before that? How do you get up, do the 3 M's that I talk about: movement, mindfulness, and mastery? How do you get those in before you have to start addressing the rest of the world for the rest of the day? Because if you can't at least have those few moments for yourself to start, when are you going to get them? So that's just, that's pretty much the deal. So you just kind of figure out what time to wake up from there.
Well, members of my family are members of your Shine Squad, and they just love the heck out of you. So keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Amy, thanks for sharing this branding story with me. I hope we get to connect with you again real soon.
I know. I miss you, Steve. Thanks for having me.
I will talk to you. Stick around in the green room. I'll say goodbye to you in a sec. I'll just deal with some details here now first. Amy Landino, folks. By the way, Amy's talking, when we talk about credibility, as far as all of the stuff that we've done, I didn't even point out in the middle of our conversation that Amy, in her branding, she changed her last name with a personal brand partway through the process and still is killing it. So take what she says as gospel. It works. I can promise you it works. So if you're looking for more information on anything that we talk about here on Just Between You and Me, I encourage you to drop by invideo.io/you and me. There you will see all of the previous interviews, and this interview will be there as well. Coming up next week, we are talking about e-commerce ads. We are going to be with Kamal Sattar. We are going to be talking about building, and he deals with physical products, dropshipping, and mastering the art of e-commerce ads, something that I know precious little about. So I am looking forward to learning along with the rest of you. My thanks to our hosts at InVideo. If you are looking at creating content that works, that compels, that kills, from based on any of the content that you created, blogs, podcasts, videos, the best way to create your supporting content, in my opinion, is creating small videos, interstitial videos using InVideo. Their platform is just golden, and it's something that we use on a daily basis at Dottotech. And I know almost every one of our guests, the reason that they come on the show is they're big fans of InVideo as well. So I encourage you to test drive the InVideo product if you haven't yet. That will wrap us up for today. My thanks to everybody all of the questions, some great comments, and especially to Amy. I know that carving out some time in her morning routine is always special, and I appreciate the fact that she made some for us. Till next time, till next week, I'm Steve Dotto. Have fun storming a castle.